Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a wrap-up for June. Crazy, June is coming to a close. Actually, June has already been over for 4 days. Happy 4th of July. But I'm going to be doing a wrap-up of the 7 books I read this month. Yeah, 7. Crazy. I had 7 books on my TBR. I read 4 of the 7 books that I put on my TBR, which I'm happy about because that's more than it was last month. This reading month was way better than last month's reading month. It was pretty good. Last month was okay. This month was pretty good. Let me tell you about the books that I did not read out of my TBR first, and then we can go through all the books that I did read this month. Okay, so I have the books that I didn't read off of my TBR. I was surprised Stephen King is on there, but I will tell you guys, I did start 11/22/63 by Stephen King. I am 109 pages in. This book is a brick. Like, what do you expect? But here's proof. I did in fact start it on June 27th. Either way, it wasn't going to be finished by the end of June. That wasn't happening. But I did start it, just didn't finish it. Then we have The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. Trust me, I wanted to read this, but I guess it just got away from me, you know? Time just got away from me. But I do still really want to read this. I don't know if I will read it this month, but I do hope to read it sometime in August so that it'll still be those summer vibes that I crave. But I didn't read this month. And then lastly, Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. I also didn't read this book, which is okay. It's fine. But honestly, I'm not too upset about not having read this because it's just not something that I'm really interested in reading at this time. But I will read it at some point. I will probably read this closer to Halloween because it does take place on October 31st. So I feel like that just makes the most sense. So yeah, those are the 3 books off of my TBR that I didn't read. Now we will talk about the 7 books on my TBR, or the 7 books that I have read this June. The first book that I read was Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. This book is in a reading vlog, so you guys have gotten my full in-depth review about this book in that video. Loved this book. I gave this book 5 stars. Is anyone surprised? I loved this book. I love Johnny. I love Shannon. I love all the side characters. I loved this book. There's a bit of found family, specifically with because Johnny had his group of friends and then Shannon had her group of friends, which was Claire and Lizzie. But then we see Johnny with Gibbsy, and we see Gibbsy kind of taking Shannon. I'm just like, oh, my entire heart. I loved it. I felt like this was really, I feel like the problems that they were having was realistic as someone who has played a sport and experienced an injury. I feel like it was that was very realistic. And a lot of stuff in this book made me feel, like specifically Shannon's family problems, made me feel a lot. It was quite sad. But I loved this book. I love these characters, and I can't wait to read the second book. But this was a 5-star, all around 5-star book. Next, I read Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. This was also in the Reading Booktubers favorite books, and this book was also a 5-star. I love Archer. I feel like a lot of people don't talk about Archer when we are talking about book boyfriends, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, he needs to be on that list. I love Archer. I felt like even though he couldn't speak, he was probably the most vulnerable character that I've ever read about. I feel like he was very vulnerable in the way he showed his emotions and showed what he was scared of. Like it was so good. Travis, I don't like him. I'm gonna read his book, but I don't like him, and I don't think there's gonna be anything that could really change that. But we will see. I did love this. I loved the relationship between Archer and Bree. This book is also very kind of sad because we are focusing on two different types of their trauma, and trust me, they go into it and it gets sad, and I can see why people cried at this book. But I did give this book 5 stars, and I do hope to read more of Mia Sheridan's writing. Next was Felix Ever After by Casey Callender. I gave this book a 3.5 star. I'm pretty sure it's not on Goodreads because I don't really track on Goodreads anymore. I track in my notes app. But yes, I gave this a 3.5 stars. I think it was very hard for me to sympathize with Felix in general. With like everyday things, not with his sexuality and his gender. That I can sympathize with. I will never understand what he's going through, but I could sympathize with him in that aspect. But any other aspect, like with how he dealt with things that were happening to him, like things that were being said to him and happening to him, and how he reacted to those situations and how he treated his friends, cannot sympathize with him in those situations, because in my opinion, I felt like he just handled those situations very immaturely, to say the least, especially the situation with him and Ezra. That was handled immaturely. No one can convince me that it wasn't. But other than that, I did like all the other characters. I did like the little mystery aspect. Did not see that coming. This is also in a vlog if you want to see how like in-depth feelings of how I felt towards this book. It is in a reading vlog. But yeah, I did like the characters. Found it hard to sympathize with Felix, but other than that, like everything else I did like. I felt like how they acted was very much very realistic to how a 17-year-old would act in high school, and what they were doing is very realistic to what 17-year-olds in high school are doing. So yeah. Then I read One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This book I gave a 4.25 stars. I did really like this book, but I love Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. One of my favorite books. And I was definitely kind of comparing this book to Red, White, and Royal Blue when I was reading it, which is that's me problem. And it didn't live up to that book. That book is a 5-star, 6-star book. This book is a 4.25. It was still good. The writing's super easy, as always. I don't know what my problems were with this book. I probably said it. This is also in a vlog. I probably said it in that video. I don't know. I just know it wasn't a 5-star book. And that's okay. Yeah, what else to say? I don't know. It was a cute book. It was cute. It was definitely cute. But yeah, that was that book. Then I read Andrew and Santi Were Here by Johnny Garza-Villa. This book I really did enjoy. It was a 4.5 star. This book, we are in Texas. Andrew and Santi. This book takes place in close to San Antonio, I think. And both of our characters are Mexican American, and we're kind of following them. Santi is an undocumented immigrant, so we kind of see how that process is and what goes into that and how scared they are. And we see kind of how they have to deal with that. And there's a situation in this book that is super terrifying. I don't know what I would do if I was ever in that situation. And it definitely puts it into a different perspective, because obviously I am not someone that has to deal with stuff like that. So I am ignorant towards it. I can admit that. So reading about it, and I'm just like, wow, like that's scary. I couldn't imagine being in a situation like that. So reading about that definitely taught me a lot. But we see these two kind of navigate that and navigate the relationship with all of these different things that are kind of working against them in a way. But I loved the characters, their reactions and their actions based on their reactions felt real. I think this was a beautifully written book. Just didn't give me 5-star feels. I feel like towards it was like towards the middle, I kind of got not bored. I just lost a bit of interest towards the middle, and then towards the end I became more interested again. But I think that's why I can't give this a 5 stars, is because I was not fully interested and intrigued throughout the entire book. There was parts of this book where I was just like, I don't know. But I do think this is a good book. I think this does teach a lot about relationships and relationships between people of different races and how certain situations can affect those relationships. I think this was super, 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 super good. Next book was Beach Read by Emily Henry. I finally read it. And I'm actually really glad I did, because the first book I read by Emily Henry was Book Lovers, and I was not a fan of that book. I think I gave it a 3-star. I wasn't a big fan. Like, a 3-star is not a bad rating, but I just, like, I didn't get the hype after reading that book. I did not get the hype. After reading this book, I definitely do. I get the hype now. It was a cute book. I feel like I don't understand why this book is called Beach Read though, because they are not on a beach. I think there's like one or two scenes where they're on like sand next to a lake, but I don't think they are on a beach at all. So I'm very confused as to why the book is called Beach Read, but that's besides the point. I gave this a 4.5 stars. 4.5, either 4.5 stars. And I really like the characters. I liked the plot of the story. I felt like I liked January a lot more than I liked, what was her name, Nora in Book Lovers. I liked her a lot more. She was a lot more bearable. I don't like that her name is January though. Why does her name have to be January? Like, out of all the months, I don't know. Towards the end you kind of realize it connects with other things, but like January, I'm sorry, I don't know. But it was a cute book, but it wasn't a 5-star, which is okay, but it was a really good book. We follow Augustus and January. I feel like they both, in a way, were just a tiny bit childish in their assumptions for one another, especially since their assumptions were made when they were in college. Specifically January, I feel like she kind of assumed a lot of things and kind of just ran with it, and sometimes you can't do that. And she definitely ran with a lot of these assumptions, and then when she was like called out on it, she was kind of just like, well, whatever. No, girl, no. But yeah, that's all I have to say about this book. I mean, I enjoyed it. There was nothing wrong with the book. Um, but I do feel like Emily Henry, there's a certain way that she writes the dialogue and the characters in her books that I don't know, it cringes me out sometimes. It cringes me out, and I know I'm not the only person that feels like this, because I was talking about this with my friend at work. I'm not the only one who feels like this, but like the way she writes her characters sometimes, it's just like I I don't know. It gives me the ick sometimes. But this was a 4.5 star. I enjoyed it. That's all I have to say. The last book that I read of the month was The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. This book, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I did guess the plot twist, but I'm not gonna act like I guessed the plot twist like ages before it came. I guessed the plot twist literally the page before they told me what it is. I'm not that smart. I was reading and he said something, because we were following, the main character is Theo. He said something and he was like, I'm not gonna tell you what he said, but he said something and immediately it clicked in my head. I was like, wait a second. And I literally wrote it down. I wrote it down in my notes, and literally the page after, it literally said what I thought, and I was like, what the heck? The plot twist was actually insane. It was actually crazy. But I liked this book. I didn't even tell you I rated it. 4.75. This book is a 4.75. I rated this book a 4.75 because the pacing was really weird. There was parts where the pacing was really fast, and there was parts where the pacing was really slow, and it would definitely turn some people off of a book. For me, it didn't bother me that much, but it bothered me enough not to give this 5 star. But yeah, in this book we're following Theo, and he is a psychotherapist. I am very interested in the mind and how the mind works in psychology, so this book is right up my alley. But we're following Theo. He's a psychotherapist, and he is trying to treat this woman named Alicia. And Alicia is a famous painter who allegedly killed her husband and then never spoke again afterwards. Killed her husband and then went silent, went mute. And he comes to this, comes to where she is to try and get her to talk again. And that's all I can say, because the plot is crazy. I literally suspected every single person, including the person who it was. I suspected every single person. And it's safe to say that you can't trust anyone in this book. You just can't. You can't. But it's a 4.75, and I do think a lot of people will like this. If you are not interested in how the brain works, because they go very in-depth into it, and it kind of annoys you to talk about how the brain works, you're not gonna like this. Don't read it. But I don't see how that would bother most people. Like, they don't... It goes a lot into it. You learn a lot in this book about how the human brain works, and I enjoyed it. It talks a lot about traumas and how traumas affect you lifelong. How, like, it's a lifelong thing and not just the right then and there and then you get over it. It's a lifelong thing, and how it affects how you think, how you act, what you do. It talks a lot about a lot. Because it's talking about mental illnesses, it's talking about addictions, it's talking about how your brain works, how your brain is wired after these things happen to you. It talks about a lot. It was very interesting to me as someone who is very interested in psychology. So if that's not something you enjoy, keep that in mind before reading this book. But I do think it's a great book, and I do think a lot of people would enjoy this book. Yes. I don't think I ever said what any of these other books were about, so I'm just gonna go through and do that. Beach read in this book, I gave this book a 4.5 stars. In this book, we are following January and Augustus. We learned that they have met each other before, they know each other, and they are both writers, and in this book they kind of make a deal to write like the other person for their next book. And we kind of watch how that affects the relationships, and how their past affects the relationships as well. And yeah, because January is going through her own stuff, Gus is going through his own stuff. Yeah, that's that. And Andrew and Santi were here. I think I already said what we were going through in this book. This was a 4.5. One Last Stop was a 4.25. In this book we are following, what was her name? August. We are following August. She just moved to New York City, and she gets on this bus, and this bus is magical. It's magic. And she meets Jane, but Jane is kind of like stuck on this bus. Jane can't get off of this bus. She is like tethered to this bus, and they form up a little romance, and she's gonna try and get Jane off of the bus, but some things happen. Obviously, when you mix magic, things happen, obviously. So there's that. Felix Ever After, we are following Felix. He is a trans black queer character, and we are basically just following him and his identity journey and sexuality journey. And yeah, he's a 17-year-old that goes to a art school, and someone does something to, oh, it says on the back, a student hangs up his dead name and his post-transition or his pre-transition photos up on the wall, and it's anonymous, so he doesn't know what's happening. And then he starts getting these texts from this person that did it, and yeah, there's that. So there's the coming of age part where we're kind of just watching him grow up and figure out who he is, and then we're also watching that little mystery unfold and figuring out who done it. Archer's voice, we are following Bree and Archer. Archer does not talk. Archer is mute. There is a situation that happened when he was younger that has caused him to lose the ability to talk. And then we have Bree, who also has experienced her own trauma, and which causes her to have a lot of panic attacks and to be very on edge and anxious a lot of the time. And Bree is kind of the only person who, she moves to a small town in Maine, and she's kind of the only person who gives Archer the benefit of the doubt and kind of forges a relationship with Archer. We also have Travis in here, who kind of tries to stop that because of his reasons. But I did really enjoy this. This was really cute. And then lastly, we have Binding 13, which I'm sure everyone knows what this book is about. We are following Johnny and Shannon. Johnny and Shannon are both go to this school, because I think they're young. So I think they go to, it's like a high school, and they go to the school called Tommen. It's not a university. Tommen College. But they're like not even like this takes place in, where does it take place in? Ireland. So this book takes place in Ireland in 2005. I was just born in 2005. I'm also not from Ireland. I've never been to Ireland. So I don't know how the schooling system works in Ireland. So they go to Tommen College, and we're following these two. These two don't know each other until something happens, and then they know each other. And Shannon has been bullied basically her entire life, and so she has to transfer to Tommen College, and that's where she has her two friends there. And something happens where Johnny feels as if he needs to protect Shannon, and protect he does. But it also doesn't help that Shannon's home life is very difficult for her, and Johnny is also harboring this issue that he has, and all of it just coming together and how they react and everything. Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And everyone should read it. The writing is kind of like the writing at the beginning, I feel like might bother some people because the writing is, it's like this. So I'm wearing this, this, and this. I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this. That's how the writing is. It didn't bother me because I had a Wattpad phase. So I mean, the writing on that app is questionable to say the least. So writing like this doesn't really bother me as much as it may bother other people. But I do think this book was good. If you could get past the writing style, beautiful. There is an age gap in this. It's a two-year age gap that I know bother a lot of people. So if that's also something that you are not interested in, don't read it. I would check trigger warnings for honestly all the books that I read this month. I would check trigger warnings, except for, no, even Beach Read. I would check trigger warnings for every book, no matter what type of book it is. Check your trigger warnings. You never know, especially with this book. If you're to read it, please check your trigger warnings. There's a lot that goes on in this book, and there's a lot that could be triggers for people in this book. So I would check my trigger warnings, your trigger warnings. But yes, it was a great book though. So those are the 7, oh, that's so crazy, 7 books that I read in June. I already posted my July TBR, so you guys know what that is. Hopefully I read the books on that TBR. We shall see. I am holding myself to it this month, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have opinions on these books, let me know, because I know some of these books are, people are diehard for some of these books, and then people are kind of just like, I can do without with some of these books. So tell me how you feel about these books in the comments. Other than that, I'll see you guys next Tuesday. Bye.